What's up, everybody? Welcome back into an episode of The Lawyer You Know. And today we are digging back into Proctora's box here that has been opened. And I realize by the time you are watching this video, it is very possible, almost likely, that more information has come out, that more has trickled out, more investigations have begun, more requests have been made in other cases that are at least somewhat connected to former trooper Michael Proctor. We realize that this is going to be an ongoing thing for the time being because his text messages, his phone, his car information is all being looked into in the form of public records requests and things being turned over in discovery in other cases, and even subject to some protective orders, whether it's at the federal level or the state level. But as more information comes out, this is an absolute nightmare for the Commonwealth. They're going to have to deal with this from now into what feels like unto oblivion, with so many cases with Michael Proctor's fingerprint on them, or people connected to Michael Proctor, and maybe even in his phone, on text message conversations, maybe with his law enforcement vehicle, potentially. We've got a lot to discuss today. We're going to get into it. We're going to answer your questions. Make sure you guys all hit that like button and double check. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're not, you should also hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. So we're going to start out with, and I thought I'd make it clear right in the beginning, right? What my role is in all of this versus so many other people on the internet, in the world, in Massachusetts, boots on the ground, lawyers on the case, whatever it may be. And I've said this before, but I just want to make sure it's very clear. I am not a news breaker. Okay. And I hope to not be a news maker on any story ever being, wrapped up in something personally as a lawyer or YouTuber. But what I am is I like to explain what's going on. I like to dig in. I like to analyze. I like to talk about it from a lawyer's perspective and answer your questions from the legal standpoint of when this information comes out. Okay. So I'm sure other people are going to be doing a great job digging in, breaking news, putting this together, doing the research on, what's coming out in this public records request. What do we see from Proctor's phone? What is this person tweeting about it? Is this person a reliable source that's tweeting about it? And then you send it to me and you ask me questions. Okay. So that's what I want to make sure everybody understands. There's going to be a lot, everything that I am always using, other people have sent to me. A lot of times it's Ashley or Sleuthy, or I'm finding it on Marbury versus Mad's Twitter. Somebody's tagging me in it, or she's, DMing me something, whatever it may be. So many people do a great job in getting all of these documents together. And what we're going to do is break them down and take a look at how all of this kind of comes together. And what we're going to start with is, and this is probably going to be read with no explanation, because this is just kind of an example of how this is going to look and work, right? We've all seen links posted. This is from my FOIA request or my public records request. Look what I found. Or we're going to look at some news reports. Ted Daniel, again, another person breaking news and going through documents. A lot of good people out there doing it, okay? So I don't want to take credit for any of this, because then a lot of you guys, subscribers and chat, people and members send me this stuff. But this is just the Commonwealth's notice of discovery in the Miles King case. Now comes the Commonwealth in the above captioned matter and respectfully states that it provided counsel for the defendant with copies of the following additional discovery materials: the federal order, the grand jury investigation dated 10/16/25, categories of confidential federal materials, a chart of call detail records, grand jury testimony of Michael Proctor dated February 1st, 24, initial production from former trooper's personal phone, covered by the endorsed protective order. So a lot of these things are covered by the protective order, mean we can't talk about it. Don't talk about it. Don't post it publicly. Don't share it with other people. I think they talked about even saying you can't show the defendant, but you can tell the defendant on the case what's in it. The Department of State Police Division of Investigative Services report by Major Jeffrey Boutwell. Phone extraction of Proctor's work phone. NDAO Digital Forensic Extraction report by S. Voigt, a lot of which is covered by the protective order. But it is apparent that information is trickling out. And every single case that they disclose things, whether it's grand jury transcripts, whether it's Proctor's personal phone, Proctor's work phone, investigation information into the investigation of Michael Proctor or Karen Reed or whoever it may be, as that stuff keeps coming out, we can expect there to be more rumblings, more breaking news, more connecting of the dots, which is just going to make life more and more difficult for law enforcement and the Commonwealth in Massachusetts. Chris said, Peter, you just being a civil lawyer, do you think we need a real lawyer to look into this? Asking for Francis F. in the chat. I know Francis is usually asking you to speak for her, so I understand why this could be a thing. And just in case anybody wants to go off on Chris, he's just kidding. But it's really unbelievable because we are crossing over into so many different areas of law, right? Obviously criminal, which we'll talk a lot about. There's employment, right? A lot of employment law issues for Michael Proctor and maybe some other law enforcement agents in here. The political side of things with people that have been voted into office, that appoint different positions here that we're talking about. There's obviously a lot of civil cases going on that I think are going to involve Proctor and Tully and maybe some other people that are found out to be on text message chains and threads in Proctor's phone. So this is crossing over into so many different areas of law. It is very clearly not just a criminal law issue. But let's take a look at one of these criminal cases, right? This was the discovery production in Miles Kings's case. And then we have now a motion for funds for a private investigator in Miles Kings's case. Now comes the defendant, Miles King, by and through his attorney and moves pursuant to this rule that the Honorable Court allocate funds not to exceed $10,000 for expenses related to hiring a private investigator. In support thereof, King states as follows. The defendant's family privately retained counsel, but has exhausted their funds, and Mr. King is now indigent. He is without funds to pay for a private investigator. But for that indigency, the funds for an investigator would be secured. King is charged with a serious offense. Over the past year, the Commonwealth provided additional discovery in this case. On October 24th, 2025, counsel received initial disclosures from former Trooper Proctor's personal cell phone that require hiring an investigator to assist in investigating data and interviewing potential witnesses. Counsel has to review and evaluate all of the evidence and will require hiring an investigator to assist in investigation and interviewing witnesses. The funds requested are fair and not excessive. Justice dictates that this motion be allowed. As the Supreme Court has pointed out, the Supreme Judicial Court has pointed out, the standard for deciding whether a request for extra fees and costs should be granted is set forth in this rule, which states, if the court makes a finding of indigency, it shall not deny any request with respect to extra fees and costs if it finds the document, service, or object is reasonably necessary to assure the applicant as effective a prosecution or defense as he would have if he were financially able to pay. A lot of us can roll our eyes at that. It's not usually to that level, but that's the goal. The test is whether the item is reasonably necessary to prevent the party from being subjected to a disadvantage in preparing for, or presenting his case adequately in comparison with one who could afford to pay for the preparation and, that the case reasonably requires. Finally, the 6th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution and Article 12 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights guarantee defendants the right to the effective assistance of counsel. Failure of defense counsel to call an expert witness was ineffective assistance of counsel and required new trial. We know there are obviously limits. You can pick and choose these sites, but you don't have unlimited funds if you're indigent. We realize that would be impossible. Defense counsel must conduct investigation of facts and potential defenses in order to provide a defendant with effective representation. Defense counsel cannot provide effective assistance of counsel or ensure protection of Mr. King's constitutional and statutory rights in this prosecution in the absence of funds to obtain a private investigator. Okay, that was on 1029. This says on 1031, after review, denied without prejudice in light of something, my authorization of funds for the same something in Commonwealth versus Johnson. So I don't really know what that means. It's handwriting, kind of chicken scratch. I might not be able to read it. But so there's a couple questions that always come with something like this. And one of the questions is, I thought he hired, Is this the one that Scapaccio's on? I think that's this one. Yeah, Rosemary Scapiccio is on this case. I don't know how to say her name. I butchered another name, and a lawyer wrote me. I was like, hey, here's how you say it. But so he's already hired a private lawyer in the case. They put that in the motion. Yes, he's hired a private lawyer, but now he's indigent. So the court's going to have to look, see, is he indigent? If he is indigent, make the determination as to whether or not he is entitled to these additional funds because they need help from a private investigator. What do they need that private investigator to do? Everyday Loser, thank you for gifting 5 Lawyer You Know memberships. So they specifically need up to $10,000. Doesn't mean they're going to spend $10,000. Generally speaking, this isn't something that's excessive. Generally speaking, if somebody was indigent, the vast majority of courts would allow, a lot of people tell me Scapiccio. Okay, Scapiccio. I will try to get it right. But from the vast majority of cases, courts would allow something like this. They would allow you to have a private investigator to do research, look into things, interview witnesses, go talk to witnesses. And the reason you need a private investigator, and we've seen it in some other trials, is it's not always great for the lawyers to go interview witnesses. Sometimes it does happen, but sometimes it's nice if you need to impeach a witness or if a witness becomes unavailable, you can sometimes have the investigator come in, impeach the witness, say, no, they actually said X, Y, and Z. I think it happened most recently in Donna Adelson's trial where the defense brought their investigators in to impeach some of the jailhouse snitches. So it's nice to have somebody else in line that is a professional. Sometimes they have law enforcement experience and background, and it's nice to kind of juxtaposition them to the Commonwealth or the state's law enforcement witnesses. So it's nice sometimes to have that. But an investigator, and we saw it in Sarah Boone's case, right? She had an investigator doing so many things, especially when she was pro bono. So this is not something that's unreasonable generally. Sometimes courts, and we saw in the Alan Jackson case, sometimes courts are hesitant to grant funds to somebody that was able to privately hire a lawyer. It's like you have money, you can't pick and choose. They were able to pay for your services. They should have thought about this when they hired you, that you were going to need experts or investigators as well. You chose to take all the money, Miss Lawyer, Mr. Lawyer. I'm not saying, she did anything wrong clearly, because we've been in this situation as well, but it's not always so cut and dry when somebody does have a private lawyer. Thank you, Susan C, for gifting 5 Lawyer You Know memberships. Looks like we got a bunch of gifted memberships coming in. So everybody jump in here and get some. Make sure it's turned on, whatever you need to turn on to get the gifted membership. So while it's not an unreasonable ask, it's not quite the same as if they were found indigent from the beginning, which I think this would have already been granted. I still think this should get granted, if you want my opinion. One of the reasons is the defense could not have foreseen that something like this was going to come up, right? It's like, Judge, we planned our defense. All of his money's gone. We're ready to go to trial. And then boom, the Proctor bombs dropped on us. And it's like, now we have to do all this extra work, because look at the work specifically that they're talking about. This is right after the last notice of discovery that we read, right? That's why I read that notice of discovery first before reading this. Over the past year, the Commonwealth has been provided additional discovery. On October 24th, counsel received initial disclosures from former Trooper Proctor's personal cell phone that require hiring an investigator to assist in investigating data and interviewing potential witnesses. So they have directly connected this with something new that has happened. This is part of the Proctor aura that's coming out here and touching everything else. Because we have all this additional discovery, it has created significantly more work for us to do as a defense. We need an investigator to do things lawyers can't do and to help the lawyers. And when it comes down to it, Judge, we didn't plan for this. It is not our fault. You're going to be hurting the defense. This is the argument I would make to the judge. You're hurting the defense even more because we have this shady cop and Commonwealth that hasn't turned over information in the past they should have. That's exculpatory. We're going to have to fight about what's exculpatory. How do we prove it's exculpatory? How do we prove something is not here? That's very difficult for us to do. An investigator will help us do this. Will help ensure that justice is served and that Mr. King gets effective representation. And without the investigator, we're not going to be able to handle all this extra crap that has been dropped on us because of Proctor. You might not want to say crap to the court, but I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. Counsel now has to review and evaluate all of the evidence and will require an investigator to assist in investigating and interviewing witnesses. They need the investigator to specifically do the investigator's job. Proctor's just going to bring down the Commonwealth. One cell phone and Massachusetts is burning down. Man, I don't know that one cell is causing it to burn down, but it's surely creating tons of issues in way more cases than you would ever expect. Aaron, thank you for gifting 10 Lawyer You Know memberships. So when we have a situation like this, it's a very clear example where Proctor is creating an issue in this case. His cell phone information is starting to trickle out, and they need to do a lot of work. They're not just going to take what is given to them. They're not just going to say, oh, this is probably everything. They need to go talk to witnesses. They need to go see who's part of this group chat. What did they know? What did they say? Did they have anything to do with my case? Are there any internal affairs investigations going on with them? Let's go look at Proctor's investigation. Let's bring in the investigator to look at the investigation as well. Maybe interview some witnesses there. So there's all sorts of information coming out. So much of it has to do with Michael Proctor. And this is just one case. How many cases are going to ask for $10,000 for an investigator to jump in and interview and research and look at all of the stuff that comes from Proctora's box? How many dollars from taxpayers in Massachusetts are going to go into doing this work? M. Medina, yes, finally caught you live. Got to catch up. Yeah, you got to catch them all. We're like Pokemon here, right? You got to catch us live. Yeah, I'm pumped you guys are all here because I know the last one I did was not a live. And I like to do that sometimes where it's like a pre-record and then a live so that, we can get the information out there, but also have some time to dig in and answer all of your questions. Zezalek said, November is CRPS Awareness Month. Thank you for the podcast about Maya trial and helping to spread awareness. You are very welcome. That is very sad. So brutal to even think about that. Mario, do the courts know how much a lawyer costs? No, they do not know. It's not something that's disclosable. In some cases, it might come out. Generally, I would say most judges know which are the expensive lawyers and which ones are not the expensive lawyers. I think the comment made to Alan Jackson, that judge probably has a guess as to what range Alan Jackson may be in, not the exact amount. But yeah, so generally speaking, they probably know ballpark depending on who the lawyer is, but no, not the exact amount. It's a good question. Is it possible that Michael Proctor could ever face jail time for any of this mess he has caused? It is possible. We talked about that on the last video, so I won't rehash it as much. And Betero posted on his Twitter some ways that depending on what comes out of his cell phone, if he broke some laws, it is possible. It is possible. What would you advise Proctor to do now? Nothing. I mean, there's nothing you can really do. I would say nothing. I would do nothing. I would speak to nobody because he can't go back and change what's in his phone, right? I wouldn't go on an apology tour. I wouldn't go on a explain myself tour. I wouldn't do any of that. All right. We're going to take a quick break here, and I'm going to pull up the next document. There are so many gifts to choose from when you're looking to buy something for somebody that can really change their life, right? Well, how about giving them some better sleep? Dream has been a great supporter and sponsor of this channel for a long time, and it really works. I fall asleep easier and I stay asleep longer. I never really had a problem falling asleep, but staying asleep was always a problem for me. And once I would wake up, my mind would race. With Dream, it is so much easier to fall back asleep, whether I wake up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. I can get that good night's rest. And because I sleep through the night and I sleep hard through the night, it recharges me for the next day so that I can be uber productive, which is my favorite kind of day. And now you can give it to them for up to 50% off. So shop Beam's Black Friday sale with up to 50% off for a limited time. This is Beam's biggest sale of the year and the best deal I've ever shared. So don't miss out. No code needed. The discount will auto apply at checkout. So use my link and give a gift that actually makes a difference. All right. The next thing happening with Proctor that we're going to talk about here is from Ted Daniel. He's breaking all kinds of news and looking into the documents and comparing them and seeing what he can find. And as he finds something, he's reporting on it. As he finds something, he's writing a story. And like I said at the very beginning, there's multiple things going on, right? There are multiple people looking into different public records. There are multiple cases where they're trying to get Proctor's phone information. Whether or not certain lawyers ask for the information on Proctor's phone, the Commonwealth is going to be forced to turn it over in cases that it is exculpatory, that it is Brady information. And if you remember, Brady is anything that tends to say the defendant is not guilty, that tends to help the defendant's case, that tends to hurt the state's case, that tends to make a witness credibility at issue, especially a state witness. If it's going to hurt the witness credibility or be a potentially impeachable event, you have to turn that over. So Proctor's phone is going to be Brady material in multiple cases that we don't even know about yet. It's not just the cases currently asking for it. Because when prosecutors look through that phone, they should say, oh, does this affect the Jones case? All right, I got to turn it over. Could Proctor be a witness here? Did Proctor gather evidence here? If he did, was Proctor a supervisor here? Then we have to turn it over. Well, speaking of Brady material and things that is potentially exculpatory, Ted Daniels is about to talk about something that I didn't know about, and that if I did know about it and I was representing Karen Reed, I certainly would have liked to know it, and I think it would have helped my case quite a bit as potential Brady information. Let's listen to what Ted Daniels has to say, and then we'll talk about how could Karen Reed's lawyers potentially have used this at trial.
This story was born out of
course, I have it on my sped up time. Let's move it back down.
a pretty high profile. This
Boost the audio up. All right, here we go.
story was born out of a pretty high profile case that I covered, the Karen Reed case, and the activities of a now former state trooper. We learned that trooper took a trip to the Cape, which was a big deal during the Karen Reed trial. And I was reading through the documents about that trip, investigative reports, internal affairs reports, and I noticed that the trooper had a device in his car that was supposed to track wherever that car went, but the data didn't exist. It just showed essentially his car turning on in the morning and then coming home late at night. I was able to determine from some of the documents as well that this trooper had a switch to be able to shut off his tracking device. And so I said, okay, what's the deal with these tracking devices? And I looked back, and several years ago, the state police did this big sort of media availability where the then colonel talked about, hey, this is all about transparency and accountability. We'll be able to keep track of everyone on the road. And that was born out of a previous scandal, the overtime scandal. And so they said, hey, let's do this tracking system. Through the course of our reporting, we learned that a large number of these cars with tracking have a kill switch. There are legitimate reasons a kill switch may exist, but in the cases, a couple cases we found, it was being abused. 25 investigators.
How about that? We might play that again because there was a lot in a minute and 40 seconds of Ted Daniel there. But the gist is, in an effort to show transparency, MSP put trackers, GPS trackers on law enforcement cars because there was a scandal. And how do you respond to a scandal? Well, you do something that really builds trust back with the community. So what do? They put GPS on cars so we know exactly where all these cops are at all times to make sure they're working for you. And guess what? I think we're going to read another article here from Boston 25 where it costs, I don't know, a lot of money. $225,000 is sticking out my head. I can't remember exactly how much it costs. But when it comes to GPS tracking, you not only have to pay for the equipment for the GPS, you have to store the data somewhere, which costs way more money than you would expect with all these different cars out there going different directions. And if somebody asks about that in discovery and wants that information, they have to be able to download it and give it to you. So it all costs money. You guys know where that money comes from? Listen, in Florida, we got to pay for all Sarah Boone's lawyers. So I feel a small percentage of your pay in Massachusetts, but that's coming tax dollars. Tax dollars are paying for that. So when you think about the money it costs for them to, somebody said $70,000 a month. When you think about the money it costs to put the GPS in the cars, to track the GPS in order to buy good favor and transparency with the community after a scandal. And then what do? You put a kill switch in there where they can turn it off. Does the community know about that? What is the purpose of the kill switch? We're going to talk about what the purpose is. In the article, they talk about what the purpose is and what percentage of law enforcement vehicles have the kill switch. But then what do you do when they turn the kill switch on? Do they create a report Is it some kind of privilege log where they explain why did I turn the kill switch off? Does anybody want to take a guess at that? I don't know the answer, but I have a pretty good guess as to whether or not there's any accountability for these kill switches. And it's very interesting which cars they put these kill switches on. But in this attempt for fake transparency, they just create another problem. Do less, right? So let's take for a second the Karen Reed case, for example, a case we all know well. Is this Brady material? Is this potentially exculpatory? From my perspective, I think I would have a heyday with this information, and Karen Reed's lawyers are much better than me. So imagine what they would have done with not only Proctor's car, but potentially other law enforcement officers involved, testifying or not, family members, maybe friends of other people involved. Did they have a kill switch on their car? And let's say, I don't know, Proctor was using a car with a kill switch at any point after the day John O'Keefe died. Because if he did, I would like to go look at his car. Where's the GPS? Did he flip the kill switch at any point from the date of the death to any individual piece of evidence being found after the fact? Because we know what their whole theory was, regardless of what anybody thinks about planting evidence and conspiracy and cover-ups. If he had the ability to turn off his GPS in his car, don't you think that's something that may be important for Karen Reed's lawyers to know? Was he turning it off on days of or days before evidence was found? Did Berkowitz have a GPS on his car that had a kill switch? I know they're all different police agencies and stuff, but who had it? Who didn't? Who could turn off the kill switch and who couldn't? And if they did turn it off, why? Because if it was something shady, even if it has nothing to do with Karen Reed's case, if they were trying to cheat on overtime and get money that way, or going to get drunk with their friends, or leaving firearms in each other's car, we saw how that was information that came out in the trial, because it goes straight to the credibility of multiple law enforcement witnesses, which is like almost the definition of Brady evidence in so many criminal cases. How was this not turned over? I don't know the answer. Maybe Karen Reed's lawyers knew about this. I don't know. Maybe they knew about it. Maybe they knew it existed. Maybe that had nothing to do with Karen Reed's case. Maybe it was turned over. I have not heard one iota of this prior to Ted Daniel talking about it. And to me, this is yet another example of, and sure, everybody can say, oh, it doesn't matter. She's not guilty. Her case is over. It's like, yeah, but that's not how it's supposed to go. After trial one, we found out about so much information that should have been turned over that wasn't. It's like, no harm, no foul. She gets another trial. And if she would have won, you remember, I think the higher court even said, even if she would have won on any of these things, what would she have gotten but another trial? She already has that. She already has a retrial. It's already as if we reversed a guilty verdict and remanded down for a retrial. So go ahead. No harm, no foul. So now at this point, she's not guilty. So again, no harm, no foul. Big deal. They didn't turn over any of this stuff. But this is how you fix corruption. This is how you start working in the right direction. Outlets like Ted Daniel, Boston 25, talking about this stuff locally so people know. So if you're ever in this situation, or local lawyers, they know this information. Could it be important in their case? It might not be important in every case. I saw this question come in. It was a really good question, actually. Meg, is there a real chance guilty people will go free due to this? I understand innocent first, but it feels like Proctor's slime is going to make guilty a bar too high, even when a lot of evidence exists. So Meg, here's what I'll tell you. And here's my hope for the system, okay? If he at all is involved in a case, this information needs to be put out for the jury. But if the state still has enough evidence to prove beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt, I hope every juror convicts every guilty person. I hope they can figure it out. I hope the evidence is clear. I hope the evidence is overwhelming, that they can actually prove they've got the right person. And a scummy cop who did all sorts of dirty things on the background, said all sorts of horrible things, that they can look at it and make a determination as to whether or not it really affected the investigation. Was he targeting this person? Was he willing to go too far and cover something up? Did he plant evidence? Whatever it may be. And if the answer is yes, the person should go free, if there is a doubt. If the answer is this cop's a jerk, but this person did it, should be guilty. That's why it's a credibility question. It's a balancing effect. And the court's not just going to automatically throw out cases unless they prove Proctor did, in fact, destroy evidence. I think the court should potentially throw out some cases if there's fruit of the poisonous tree issues. We've had issues like that. But it's a good question. I would say there is a there is a real possibility, yes. But I don't think it's like 51% chance all of these guilty people are going to go free because Proctor's associated. Ryder Kitty. This is also confusing. It's hard for me to follow. Thank you for breaking it down. Must go back and watch your video on Karen Reed's new lawyers. Yes, that was from yesterday. But every single day, basically, something new comes out about this case. Answer a couple more questions before we go to our next piece. What further consequences, if any, could Michael Proctor face? Again, potentially criminal charges, definitely civil causes of action from people like Karen Reed. It seems like that's coming. Firecracker said, Peter, how long until Massachusetts DA does something? I don't know what you mean by does something. Like if they see Proctor committed a crime on something on his phone, I hope they would prosecute it. But turning over the discovery at this point is what they can, should, and have to do. My biggest worry and frustration is, what if they just see something and they say, oh, well, we don't think that's exculpatory. We don't think it has anything to do with your case. And the defense never gets to see it. I don't have confidence that that's not going to happen, which is why I think they should have a completely unbiased taint team that's looking through his phone, helping with these determinations and maybe asking the judge if there are any close calls. Netwoman, thank you for gifting 10 lawyer, memberships. It's a bunch. It's a bunch today. You guys are awesome. I appreciate it. Okay, let's get to this article here that has a lot of the information that you guys were kind of sharing in the chat. So let's take a look here. The Massachusetts State Police spends nearly $70,000 a month, okay, you guys are right, on a sophisticated GPS tracking system designed to enhance accountability and public safety. But 25 investigates discovered a loophole. Hundreds of cruisers are equipped with a kill switch that allows the tracking to be disabled. Investigative reporter Ted Daniel learned about the feature while reviewing disciplinary records about former state police detective Michael Proctor, who was fired for conduct revealed in Karen Reed's trial. Proctor was being investigated for an overtime shift where he and Canton Police Detective Kevin Albert, you ever heard that name before? Stated they traveled to Cape Cod to work a quote-unquote cold case. Documents from state police and Canton Police showed the two stopped for beers at Treehouse Brewery in Sandwich before having dinner and more drinks in Hanover on the way home. The following day, Albert texted Proctor a picture of 2 alcoholic drinks with the message, "It's bad. I was hungover for sure today," according to a Canton Police investigative report about the incident. Albert contends the text was a joke. 25 Investigates filed a public records request for Proctor GPS records from that day. The data shows Proctor's unmarked cruiser vehicle a total of 8 seconds and never left his hometown of Canton. The rest of his travels were never recorded because Proctor's tracking device had been shut off. I mean, there's just so much here, right? We're going to go one piece at a time. But if you're willing to, maybe lie about overtime, lie about where you're at, go get drinks and dinner while you're on work, that affects your credibility. Shows you're friends with somebody and connected to somebody maybe involved in the case. And guess what? For transparency purposes and for the people footing the $70,000 a month bill, that's why we have public records requests. We should be able to get this information. So if somebody wanted to go get it about Proctor that day, guess what? The switch was turned off. Netwoman says so they can afford kill switches, but no body cameras. Sounds like it. Body cameras are expensive as well for storing all of the videos, but they're all about transparency, but we can turn the GPS off and we don't have to record interviews. Trust us. Even though witness after witness, even on the prosecution side, was like, that's not what I said. Yeah, I disagree with what Proctor put in that report about my witness statement. And again, that's why everything is a case-by-case basis. Just because this happened in the Karen Reed case does not mean in the Miles King case it's going to be the same. It doesn't mean the same. They're going to have the same evidentiary issues or witness credibility issues. That does not mean they're going to have the same issues in Miles King's case. Every case is its own beast. What future jobs can Proctor have at this point? I mean, if you want my just honest to goodness opinion, the only way this guy gets another job is he has some friend or friend of a friend that's got a business and they can hire him for security, or as a private investigator if he's got a friend that's a lawyer. I mean, really, I don't see anything outside like a friend giving him a shot. And if he commits any wrongdoing, It's a pretty easy case for negligent hiring. It's like you knew about all this stuff. It's all public record and you still hired him and you put him in a position to make this mistake that hurt somebody. I mean, it's kind of setting up for the elements of negligent hiring. Rachel, thank you for gifting 5 Lawyer You Know memberships. Ton of new members joining today, which is always awesome. All right, let's get back to this article. 25 investigates. Okay, I saw it. The state police began installing automated vehicle locators technology in all vehicles in 2019, costing an initial $225,000. That's what I was remembering. So $225K up front, $70K a month after that. Woof. That is expensive. Thank you, Michelle, for gifting a membership. Then Colonel Christopher Mason touted the system. You can hear a little snark in the author's voice. Touted the system as a key accountability tool following a major overtime fraud scandal in 2018. State police spokesperson states the AVL system was implemented to enhance accountability, operational efficiency, and trooper safety, empowering supervisors and investigators to cross-reference location data during timesheet reviews and internal audits. Do we think that was happening? Jenny Black, thanks for gifting 5 Lawyer You Know memberships. As of September 5th, 25, 418 police cruisers, or about 14% of the department's roughly 3,000 vehicles, have these switches installed. So they have this installed on 3,000 vehicles. That's why it's so expensive. 14%, maybe that doesn't feel like a huge percentage, but to think there are 418 police cruisers driving around with this GPS system on them that can turn it off whenever they see fit. It's not a great feeling. From somebody who does not live in Boston, it's not a great feeling. Doesn't feel like I'm getting my money's worth. Now, why do they have the kill switches? The department explained that years ago, several district attorneys' offices expressed concerns that recording investigators' locations could endanger the safety of troopers, subjects, witnesses, and victims in sensitive investigations. The switches were authorized in response to these concerns. So here's what I would say. I'm not a mastermind. I'm not a genius. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. Most places I go, there seem to be easier ways to deal with this. Number one, you could have just different cruisers that don't have the GPS locators on them that you can use when a special time comes up like this. And you sign in a log, like the evidence log or whatever it may be. And when you're going to use one of these special cruisers, everybody knows what you're doing, so there's no question. And it can't just be on a random Tuesday when you're going to meet up with a buddy for some beers and a sandwich while you're supposed to be working. That's number one. Number two, you could still have an encrypted locator where law enforcement could still know where you're at, or some other kind of tracking device that's not publicly available. Or number three, you could have some kind of log, like a privilege log. I am now turning off my GPS for this case, for this purpose, so that a supervisor can check that and confirm. If anybody like me or a lawyer would be like, oh, you turned off your switch. Oh, well, that's easy. My supervisor can testify to, I was on the John Doe case and we were driving across state lines in a sensitive situation because they were a criminal informant or whatever. And you can explain it away. Carissa, thank you for gifting a Lawyer You Know membership. So there seems like easier ways to deal with this. The department denied a public records request for a list of vehicles where tracking can be shut off, stating the information will be detrimental to the security and safety of uniformed members. So there's another thing, okay? Don't give me the truth and transparency and building accountability BS when you're also going to use it to say, well, officer safety. Which I agree with you on officer safety. And if it is an officer safety concern, then pick something else for transparency, right? Body cameras or dash cameras. But if you're going to tell me this is how you want to be accountable and transparent, and you're choosing to do this as the extra step, and then you do this, it's kind of like, what's the point? That's what it feels like a little bit to me. You guys tell me if I'm off base, though. You guys tell me what you think. They did share the AVL policy with 25 Investigates in this link. Dennis Gavin, a retired police major and president of the Massachusetts Association of Professional Law Enforcement, said there are legitimate reasons for going off the radar in limited circumstances. I don't disagree with that at all. You could wind up disclosing information about critical witnesses or even informants and things like that. And those are the things that would be in the department's interest to make sure that weren't available. Fine. Create a log. Tell me what case it's on. Tell me why. Or tell me somebody else that's got special clearance or knowledge of this highly sensitive information that they can at least check you for the accountability you're pitching to me. Because even that explanation is like, oh, maybe sometimes we might have to do it. Like there might be some legitimate reasons for it. It's like, okay. In Proctor's case, he was never disciplined for turning off his vehicle locator because he was authorized to do so. What do you have to do to get authorized to do so? If it's in your cruiser, can you turn it off whenever you want? Has anybody ever in the history of having these GPSs in their cars with the kill switches, has anybody ever been disciplined for turning it off? That's a question I would have. And if so, that should be on the Brady list. This guy's turning off his GPS locator when he shouldn't, or she. That should be something you can find. Let me answer a couple questions here and then we'll finish that. But who is holding the Commonwealth accountable for deciding what is Brady or not? Are we just going to trust them? At this point, it's going to be the court. If the defense somehow, which I don't really know how do we do it, right? Sometimes we do if we talk to a witness or we do some research or we look at documents and cross-reference things. We figure out that something's missing. But if they figure out something's missing or have a question, eventually the judge is going to be the one to make the call. Aaron, is it common for courts to provide funds for investigators? Yes. If so, what are those costs? Are there limits to what the court will pay? Yes, usually there's a cap like $10,000, and they have to do investigative work, right? They can't just be doing nothing or wasting time or whatever. They're doing research, looking through documents, interviewing witnesses, traveling, looking at what police officers did, potentially if they're former police officers, and they're looking at, okay, they started here, let me go there, talk to the same witnesses, whatever it may be. So yes, they have to be doing real investigator work, but it is very common. Firecracker, I should clarify. When does the Mass DA get involved in the investigation of these officers? It's clear all have issues. So it's really difficult for people to like tell on themselves or look in the mirror or do the right thing when it comes to them. No pun intended. Because the Massachusetts DA doing the right thing and getting involved and getting rid of the bad guys could have a seriously negative effect on that DA's office, on their investigations, on putting the bad guys away. And right now, that's what it seems like they're balancing. What about the other cops involved with Proctor that are on the case? Already Good is under investigation too. Yes, it seems like Sergeant Good is under investigation. And I think that's kind of the point with, what they're doing. Talking to witnesses, going through discovery, doing investigations. And again, it's not going to happen like that. So we've got to be hopeful, as hard as it is, that they're starting to do the right thing. They're starting to investigate. They're starting to put people on paid leave, fire people, transfer people, force them to resign, whatever it may be. Get rid of the bad apples to build up confidence. Real transparency and accountability, not just lip service. Create accountability and then hold them accountable. If you have a kill switch that can only be used for certain reasons, if they don't use it for those reasons, sanction, punishment, problem, discipline. That's what's needed. Do you think everything coming to light that at some point there will be justice for John O'Keefe? Honestly, it's so hard for me to see how anything really gets proven beyond a reasonable doubt in this case. Now, maybe Karen Reed's able to prove something in civil court that gives people some semblance of justice or what really happened, but I don't know. Ashley said, I'd love to see the stats for the reporting on these switches, percentage of the time turned off. Yeah, I agree. Deborah, thank you for gifting 5 Lawyer memberships. That's awesome. All right, let's finish up this article here. An internal affairs report in 2021 highlights how the switch can be exploited. Does it take a rocket scientist to explain how the switch can be exploited? The report details an incident when then Trooper Dwayne Correa had his firearm stolen out of his unmarked cruiser following a night of drinking in Providence. I feel like we've heard this story before. Investigators found Correa had intentionally disabled his tracker to conceal his whereabouts from his supervisors. The state police acknowledge that the approach to using switches varied in its application across the department. Shocker. When you give all these people discretion and no real repercussions if they abuse it, what do you think is going to happen? Colonel Noble recently implemented an updated policy. A state police spokesperson confirmed that the new policy gives supervisors more direct oversight, specifically for reviewing the small number of requests to temporarily disable the system to protect personal safety of troopers, victims, and witnesses. So when you say something like this as a quote, which we're going to talk about another law enforcement officer that's going to respond to a quote that he made here in a second. We're not going to finish the video without that. But they say reviewing the small number of requests. How do you define small, sir? The updated policy clarifies that the AVL should be operational during normal day-to-day activities and establishes a structured process for members to request permission to disable the system only in limited extraordinary circumstances. This request must be detailed in the mission, expected duration, specific safety reasons justifying the exemption. Why wasn't this already a thing? And who is going to define what limited extraordinary circumstances means? Because words are important, definitions are important. Those pesky lawyers are going to want to know, what does this actually mean? Because it's going to be more vague than we want. I'll tell you that right now. This is like creating problems in the vein of trying to create accountability and transparency. That's the problem. Joanne, so thankful for this channel as it is helping me get through PT. I can focus on facts as I cuss my therapist. Yeah, no, I get it. PT can be brutal, but keep pushing. It's worth it. PT helps a ton. That's awesome, Joanne. Thanks for letting us know. I love to hear stuff like this. Not that you're in PT, but that the channel is helpful. Peter, where's our wolf? I've been thinking wolf in my head like this whole time. I'm just thinking like, I like to put myself in other people's shoes, right? And I'm just thinking as a prosecutor, if this is me, I'm just like, oh, wolf. I'm just like, this is so brutal. What do we do? Like, is my job now just going to be cleaning up this mess? Is my job now just going to be notifying everybody about the horrible things my important witnesses did? And the answer is probably yes. It sucks, but the answer is probably yes. And the ones that do the right thing, it's a really, really good learning experience. All right, there was a couple other things I wanted to point out here as we're kind of winding down, but we're not completely done because these are a couple fun things. All right, first, on my tweet, the first highlighted comment is Marbury versus Mad, who we know is doing God's work in this case. It says, get ready for part 2 of this episode at the end of the week with a winky face. What do you think that means? She knows something we don't. She's got a lot of documents we've never seen. She's breaking some news, doing some research, finding these things. So we'll have to stay tuned. And if anything pops up that you guys want to talk about, let me know. You might want to give her a follow on Twitter to see what she means and what that tease could potentially be referring to. All right. The next thing, a defense lawyer, a civil defense lawyer in Massachusetts reached out to me and said that Damon Seligson who is Karen Reed's civil lawyer, does in fact have some experience on the plaintiff side of things, which is good to know because we suspect that's coming in the near future for Karen Reed. These affirmative claims, which, whatever, these are claims that she's going to be filing and she will be the plaintiff on. They added new lawyers who also have plaintiff's experience. So there's plenty to go around, and I always welcome. She also fixed my pronunciation on some things that I said. I don't remember exactly what it was, so I don't want to look at it. But when it comes down to Karen Reed's defense team and what they're going to be prosecuting on the civil side for her, she's got experience on all sides and all ends. I have like 1,000 text messages popping up, so I don't know if something's happening that I don't see or what, but we'll have to look at that later. Okay. So speaking of what lawyers say, what law enforcement says and quotes that they are making, let's take a look now at a quote from a law enforcement officer we have heard from in the past and see how he would like to respond to some accusations and allegations made by Alan Jackson. So here we go. This is, I think it's Michael Cox, who is going to answer for, all of the Dever situation, what's going on, what's that about? Is he going to answer the questions? Is he going to come clean? Is he going to tell us there's a misunderstanding? Is he going to tell us, well, let me explain to you what I meant or why there was some confusion? Yes, we did meet, but we didn't talk about that. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Meantime, Karen Reed's defense attorney, Alan Jackson, sent Mayor Wu a scathing letter calling on Boston Police Commissioner Michael Cox to be placed on Boston's Brady list. Now, the Brady list is used by prosecutors to track police officers who have engaged in misconduct or have credibility issues. Here's what the commissioner had to say that you won't hear on any other station.
But what I need, it's not to be asked this question ever again, because it hasn't pertained anything to do with.
What I need, that's what he said. What I need is to never be asked this question again. It's like, brother, you don't get to choose what questions people ask. Okay. Now, my guess is he can control some of the people in that media room, but he can't control what's happening out here on YouTube and the questions people have. He can't control the questions Alan Jackson has. My guess is Alan Jackson is going to have more questions.
But what I need, it's not to be asked this question ever again, because it hasn't pertained anything to do with the police department. My condolences to the O'Keefe family for, what they've gone through, and because we did lose the department member. But outside of that, this has nothing to do with us, and I'm not going to speak on this again.
Police Commissioner.
This has nothing to do with us, and I'm not going to answer this again. Shutting it down. I don't answer to you people. I don't have to answer. Just because you want just because you have a question doesn't mean I have to give you an answer. All in the vein of truth and transparency. Could you believe that? Not even trying? Not even trying to explain it. And this is the guy that's supervising all these cops? This is the guy that's supposed to make sure these people are doing the right thing? One more time.
Any other station.
But what I need, it's not to be asked this question ever again, because it hasn't pertained anything to do with the police department. My condolences to the O'Keefe family for, what they've gone through, and because we did lose the department member. But outside of that, this has nothing to do with us, and I'm not going to speak.
Has nothing to do with him. So whether or not he has any credibility or, whether he's training these officers beneath him appropriately, none of that matters. Nothing to see here. Move along. You're not entitled to my answer. I mean, that's horrible. That's truly horrible. Do you think it's possible that other officers implicated in Proctor's text are not being investigated right now so as to not jeopardize current cases? That's not a good reason. Do I think it's possible? Sure, I think it's possible, but I don't, they would be, with these cases, I honestly have to stop myself in the middle of my thoughts and sentences so many times because so many things I would say that normally happens have already happened in this case, but they would be so stupid to do this is what I was going to say. This would never happen in another case, but so, I mean, the answer is, I don't know. We just have to wait and see. I have debilitating CRPS, RSD, and Maya's judgments being overturned. I feel that crap personally. It was brutal. And I think there were some errors made, but I do think that there were some legitimate legal problems with the trial that we knew at the time, which is why afterwards I was like, hopefully they're able to settle for a good number because there are issues. That appeal has bite. I didn't quite expect the bite to be quite as big, but here we are. Kendra, welcome to the crew. Quinn, got accepted to FSU with a full ride for law school today. Thanks for all your inspiration, Peter. Quinn, that's amazing. Anything I can do, feel free to reach out. Any questions you have, I'm happy to answer them. I love it. Go crush it. Add to the legacy that is the Harvard of the South, Florida State University College of Law. All right, so people had some questions on some other cases. Now we'll hit those real quick. Michelle, Koberger seemed to have unlimited funds, just saying, by the way, there's a hearing tomorrow in that case regarding additional restitution for the victim's family. So I saw that exists. I haven't seen that anybody really has any questions about it. If you guys have questions about it, we can load it up, take a look, and answer the questions. Sarah Boone's letter worked. The court had to do something that would allow her new private attorney to get paid. Her polite tone worked. Hey, whatever gets her rights protected and intact so we can get this case moving along to final resolution and close the door finally, whichever way that might be. Getting her lawyer to work on the case is good. It's pretty bad if he waited till now to get the judge's order to make sure he can get paid to start working on the case when her initial brief is due in like a week. So that's not great. But hey, better late than never, right? That's how the saying goes. Tiff, Peter, did you watch this teacher civil trial yesterday? Yes, I did. I've been checking for your recap. What are your thoughts? So my number one thought, which I'm not going to spoil it because I am going to do a video, I think, tomorrow on this with closing arguments and the final 2 defense witnesses. Would you ever want that expert administrator, teacher, or whatever to be running your school? Who's like, yeah, they said the 6-year-old had a gun, but like, that's not a very high concern level. And it's not very probable that something would happen. You can't just stop school all the time and have kids search. It's like, stay far, far, far away from any school my kid ever goes to. If I found out right now that the school my kids go to took her advice in implementing any safety measurements, I would pull them out of that school or have a conversation with administration like, change now. That was my visceral reaction to her, but I have more on that when we do a video tomorrow on that. The Real Melon Lord. I feel like Netflix might need to change their Karen Reed documentary / movie into a Game of Thrones style multi-series epic. I mean, honestly, that I can't even imagine what it's going to be like and how it's literally never ending. We're going to have multiple seasons like Alan Jackson, Karen Reed, everybody working on that. Just like, don't rush it. Let's get season 1 out. Then we got multiple seasons just on the trials, right? But it's still not over. It's crazy. And then you can have like season 3, Miles King, season 4, Brian Walsh. It sucks. It sucks that actually is like based on true events. I wish they just made up a story and wrote it like that so we could all be like, that's just I'm a lawyer. This stuff never happens in the law. This is not how the court system works. That's what I wish I could say. Honestly, that's what I wish I could say about this case. I wish I could watch it as a show and say, they need to get some real lawyers on there to help write this script. Rhonda said, haha, just bought Beam through your link before the ad. Hashtag Beam. Yay. Beam is awesome. Beam is awesome. We appreciate them as sponsors and I love it. I love it. Okay. That's all we got. We're right at the 1 hour mark. Worked out perfectly. So many little things trickling out here. But I appreciate you guys so much. I love hanging out with you. I love your questions. I love when you send me all these things. So continue to do it. I love just breaking this stuff down. I learned so much from your comments and your questions. That's why I ask you guys questions a lot, even in the videos that aren't live. When I ask you questions that I want answers in the comment, I go back and look at those comments to specifically see those answers that you guys give, because I learned so much from this. Did you catch the Crosby trial? I did not. I did not catch the Crosby trial. But that's all we got for this one. We are going to be breaking down the probably the verdict, closings, last witnesses of that teacher 6-year-old shooting trial at the school. And then if more Proctor stuff comes out, hey, Marbury versus Matt, she usually has the goods when she says something. So we will take a look. Somebody said EDB mentioned you today on her stream, sending her the stuff for the Karen Reed case. Emily's awesome. Period. Emily's awesome. She texts, I answer. Okay. Hopefully you guys have an awesome one. Hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Till next time, peace out. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. And if you have a case that you want to personally talk to us about in your life, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, truck accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.